Lexus, they're a company we normally associate with hybrid cars, aren't they? But after what seems like ages, they've finally decided to dip their toes into the all-electric waters. That sounds dangerous, doesn't it? With this, the UX 300e. Question is, has it been worth the wait?
This is Autotrader UK, where we drive the latest, the greatest, giving you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So strap in, subscribe, and if you have been watching,
don't stop. Don't ever stop. Okay, so what is it? Well, if you're familiar with the UX range, you'll know it is a compact crossover and a pretty good looking one at that. It seems like a lot of electric cars tend to have really smooth front ends in order to promote aerodynamic efficiency. But Lexus have just said aero schmero and stuck with their traditional spindle grille. And even though it might not be the most optimized in terms of aero, it's actually really good looking. I also love these L-shaped LEDs on the headlights. These look tremendous. Around the side, this is where you get a true sense of the car's proportions, because even though it looks quite chunky and quite big in pictures, in person, it's really compact. And don't let these big wheel arches fool you either, even though there's a lot of space between the wheels and the arch, and these 18s don't really fill it very well. If you look underneath the car, you can actually see the battery cover. So don't go taking this off-road anytime soon. Around the back, again, I like it. I like these L-shaped lights that go the full width of the car, these creases that make it look a bit more dramatic than certainly some cars in its class. So on the whole, a really nicely designed package. Some headline figures for you. The starting price is just north of £40,000. It has a 50-ish kilowatt hour battery pack, good for around 200 miles on a good day. And as with all cars, there's pros and there's cons. So let's start by looking at the pros. Let's start with the biggest pro of all, shall we? The fact that we are giving away a Lexus UX 300e to one of you lot. That's right, as part of our monthly electric car giveaway, we're giving one of these away to one of you. To find out how to enter, then just click the link down below in the description box. Now, first impressions on this car. Really, really pleasant. It's such a quiet car to drive, the UX 300e, honestly. I know electric cars are quieter anyway, but this is one of the better examples of that. It's a really, really serene, peaceful cabin. The driving position is pretty good on the whole, apart from the fact that the steering wheel doesn't go very high. This is its highest position, which means that if you like to have your seat set up as high as possible in order to get good visibility all around the car, then it can feel a bit like you got the steering wheel in your lap, but you do get used to it. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, and that is electrification really does suit a lot of cars, and that includes the UX series. I've driven previous UX models, particularly those with the hybrid powertrain and the CVT gearbox, and let's just say it wasn't my favorite powertrain in the world. But having batteries and a motor in the UX transforms this car. It's really smooth and really pleasant to drive. The suspension's pretty good as well. It irons out imperfections in the road and flows over the surface of the road really nicely to give you a nice, smooth drive. And it's got a lot of power as well, this car. It's very quick. It's got a 200 horsepower motor driving the front wheels, and it's very responsive. You put your foot down and you get an immediate response from this car. That means overtaking is exceptionally easy, as is pulling away from the traffic lights. It'll do 0 to 62 in 7.5 seconds, and it actually feels even quicker than that. It feels as quick as a hot hatch. As for handling, well, it's all right. It's got decent body control, but not a lot of grip, if I'm honest, because when you go into a corner with a little bit too much speed, then it does like to understeer. And also, if you accelerate hard on roads that aren't completely dry, then it does like to spin up the wheels a little bit. In winter, I would probably recommend upgrading to some slightly better tires. This is interesting. On top of the dashboard, you've got a mode selector switch that lets you cycle between eco, normal, and sport. All of them feel quite aggressive though, so you probably won't end up using that too much. You've also got a traction control button directly in your field of vision, but I suspect that probably won't get too much use either. This isn't a sports car, let's face it.
So it's good to drive and a pretty good looking car to boot, certainly where the exterior is concerned. So what's it like looking at, using and living with a UX 300e when you're sat inside?
The interior is actually quite nice. It's really solid. A lot of electric cars tend to be quite compromised with their interior quality because the batteries and motors are quite expensive, which doesn't leave a lot of cash to spend on the cabin. But Lexus's are actually quite nice. I love the blue and black contrasting in here. The materials are good. This blue and white leather looks really, really nice, and everything feels really, really solid and strong. There's also quite a lot of physical buttons in here for controlling the climate control, which you don't get in a lot of modern cars. You also get heated seats and heated steering wheel controls, which is a nice touch. Also, look at this center console. It's hinged on the right and on the left, which means that you can get access to it as the driver, but so can your passenger. And inside there, you get a couple of USB ports, plus cup holders, wireless phone charging. I'd say that on the whole, the cabin looks quite nice and is quite easy to use.
But not everything about the UX 300e is quite as appealing. No matter how good the interior, there's no getting away from that £41,000 price tag, which puts it on a par with a lot of rather excellent rivals. Tesla Model 3, Mustang Mach-E, Skoda Enyaq to name but a few. And many of those rivals offer a lot more, particularly where space is concerned.
Just look at the boot, for example. It's not very big at all. It's 367 litres, which is less space than you get in the Tesla Model 3 and pretty much everything else that I talked about earlier. But you do get some underfloor storage, which is where you keep your charging cable and your tyre puncture repair kit, so that's quite handy. And to be fair, you can get stuff in there, just less stuff than you can get in some of its rivals. In the back of the UX 300, it's really not massive, but to be fair, there is just about enough legroom and a decent amount of headroom. The issue comes with, as it does in a lot of these electric cars, with the fact that there's batteries underneath you, which means that your legs end up in quite an elevated position, which isn't the most comfortable, especially on a long journey. There are some things I like in here. For example, here you get a little armrest, which has a couple of cup holders, but there's not a lot of other storage back here. You get a little bit of storage in the back of the passenger seat, but on the driver's seat, nothing at all, which makes you wonder what they were thinking, really. There's also no door pockets for storing any odds and sods that your kids might have. It's almost like whoever designed this car doesn't like children or know what they are. But you do get some heated seats in the back, which I guess is useful for grown-ups, but for children who are using car seats, that's not going to be of much use at all, really. On the whole, not the most practical. There's a couple of other weird bits to do with the technology in this car as well. First of all, it uses the Lexus remote touch control system, which is basically a mouse trackpad style interface, which requires you to move your finger around this trackpad and it then controls a cursor on the screen. It's very strange, but after a while you can get used to it. The downside is that there's not a lot of functionality in the actual infotainment display. For example, there's no sat-nav in this car, which means that it's not very easy to find a local charging point. You have to use your mobile phone for that, which is, I mean, it's less than ideal, isn't it? Let's discuss the range now, shall we? So the UX 300e has a 50-ish kilowatt-hour battery pack, which according to Lexus gives it an official range of just under 200 miles. In my hands, I've been averaging around 3 miles per kilowatt hour. So 3 times 50 is 150, which is what you can probably expect to get in the real world. It's British summertime right now, so it's 17 degrees outside. And that means that in winter, you can probably expect a significant drop in range. I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing go down to around 115, 120 in colder conditions. How does the range compare to its rivals? Well, a Tesla Model 3 standard range will do around 300 miles officially, so it'll go further and cost you a little bit less. Charging is another interesting topic in the UX 300e. You have two options basically. On your right hand side, you have a Type 2 charge port, the one that you connect to your household charger, for example, and that can top you up from 0 to 100% in around 9 hours, so an overnight charge. You also have a fast charger on the left hand side, which isn't very fast actually. It only has a charging rate of 35 kilowatts, so it can go from 10% to 80% in an hour and 15 minutes. How does that compare with other cars in this class? Well, not favorably. They usually can go from 10% to 80% in only around 30 minutes, which is worth keeping in mind. It's also worth noting that that charger is of the CHAdeMO variety, which is not very popular in Europe. Most cars in this region use CCS. The other thing that's really worth bearing in mind is that this car doesn't have a built-in sat-nav. So if you ever find yourself running low on charge, you need to use your mobile phone to find your nearest charger, which is slightly inconvenient.
If you do want a sat-nav baked in, you can spec the UX300E with the Takumi pack, which also includes a head-up display and a Mark Levinson speaker system. It's not cheap though. That'll cost you around £53,300, around £13,000 more.
So, who would buy a Lexus UX300E over the competition? Well, I think the kind of person it will appeal to is the kind of person that loves the look of Lexuses. It's a very distinctive looking car and a very handsome car as well, particularly from the front. There are numerous apparent downsides, the price, the range, the speed of recharging, the lack of practicality, but sometimes cars are just an emotional purchase, And if emotionally you feel connected to the UX300E, then by all means, go check it out. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of the car down below. And also, don't forget you can win one of these by entering our electric car giveaway. All the details are in the link in the description. See you on the next one. Peace.